Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you might be joining us from. Good morning, if that's where you are. Good evening, wherever it is that you may be joining us from. We are here today to discuss business in Africa, navigating that landscape, teaching you the things that you may need to learn. You'll be hearing from some of our distinguished guests. I'll introduce them in a minute, and you'll get an idea of what we do in Africa as an organization. That's Bayi Foundation. You would get to hear from some of our partners, from one of our key facilitators here in Africa. You would get to hear interesting stories about localization here and the key steps that we believe that companies need to take to improve the economic situation in Africa and push us forward, basically, push us to the forefront of the market globally, develop more inside our nations, create more jobs, enhance the expertise in this part of the world, and basically just push ourselves. We're here to break boundaries, to create new dreams, to push visions, and see Africa thrive. So the conversation is going to be centered primarily around localization and what we can gain by localizing in Africa, in different parts of the continent, and creating new sustainable businesses that can have supply chains and direct networks within the continent. I'm going to be welcoming some of the guests that we have here. They are distinguished gentlemen. They have huge amounts of experience between them, over at least 2 decades worth of experience navigating the business sector in Africa. They've thrived in their respective careers. They've assisted multiple businesses in terms of diversifying their portfolio in Africa. Gaining investments, marketing, showcasing the capacity of businesses here in this continent. And I'm so excited to have them speak to you. I believe you will also be excited to hear from them and to see, just what they have to offer and the kind of things that they have to share with us. I'll bring our first guest onto the scene. He's a distinguished financial expert in Kenya. He's worked with multiple businesses. He has done so much in Kenya in terms of helping businesses financially, helping them to navigate their financial difficulties. And we're really, really, really excited to have him speak to us. Uh, Kennedy and Deco. Uh, Please, you can speak now, Mr. Kennedy. I think you're on mute. We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I really appreciate that kind of introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening to us. This is a great opportunity to share the insights around SMEs and how the business is working in Africa, in some of the most countries in Africa. It is a great opportunity also to learn for the SMEs, the owners, the business owners, the prospecting business owners who would like to join the business, and those people would want to start their own business. It is a great opportunity to listen, and we share knowledge on how to navigate some of the areas which have always been an issue in Africa. Maybe to start it off, business in Africa is a great opportunity. And maybe if I can delve deep into SMEs, this is the small, medium enterprises in Africa. We find that the growth of this continent depend largely on small businesses, and these businesses contribute a lot. For instance, in Kenya, we find that SME contribute to 50% GDP of this country, and that is significant in terms of growth. And that is why there is a real interest, and the government is really investing a lot in terms of empowering the SMEs in this country. And that is a reflection of what is happening in other countries. I know in West Kenya, in other areas also, which are really looking up to SMEs to do a lot in terms of impacting the economic growth. There are a number of things happening right, and there are a number of things also which are really not still remain as a challenge in the continent in terms of how we do our businesses. Quite a number of SMEs start very well. However, we find that along the way they collapse. And the main reason why they collapse is on several issues which keep on recurring. These issues are things like capital. We find that they start very well. However, when capital becomes a challenge, we find that they fall off. And that is something which is quite unfortunate. We expect that when somebody or someone has started a business, it should be empowered to grow to the next level. However, that is not exactly what is happening. We find that quite a number of SMEs are closing shops because of issues of market, because of issues of capital, and because of issues, some other external factors. So maybe just to put it brief, and maybe I can delve deep into the landscape of SMEs as we go along. Back to you, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. That was a brilliant teaser, basically into like what's going to be uncovered over the course of this conversation. So I'm very, very pleased that you were able to just briefly some of the things that you're taking away from the landscape of business in Africa. I want to turn over now to our second guest, who will also be disclosing like some of his own insights and some of his own experience in the business sector in Africa. He's had such a remarkable career, really, navigating different landscapes, navigating different challenges, not just here in Africa, but also in America, in other parts of Europe. So his experience is quite varied and quite diverse. We're very, very thrilled to have him on board. He's our very own Mr. Temidayo Adebayo. Welcome you to the webinar, sir. We're so pleased to have you here with us.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me on this webinar series this morning or this afternoon. What I thought, I was looking at the caption when I was asked to join the webinar, and it was about localization. And I've always been a big fan of localization, and most of the things we'll be talking about, or literally just been asking a question about, is what are we, what do we stand for when we use the word localization? Picking up from what Mr. Kennedy was talking about in regards to the businesses that are failing across Africa. Some would pack up businesses that, if you look at the roots of why they are failing, if we diagnose it properly, we'll probably see that the lack of capital, whatever it is, the lack of business, and if you look at the structure and the business model, you would see some deficiencies in how locally connected they are in terms of their supply chain, in terms of their business model and structure, in terms of the human capital and everything else that supports the business. And, you cannot have a successful growth model if you're not heavily, if you're not strong within the local markets that you are. What is localization in the first place? It's, basically building something that is locally absorbed, locally made, or something that is almost about 80-90% of it is locally invested. Even the money, whatever it is that you're getting, is locally structured. So I would, the fight, or the campaign, or the notion behind growth, and COVID-19 gave us a very clear definition of what it means to not be local. And when you're heavily reliant on businesses across the border. Now, globalization is great, trade is great, but trade has leverage on what are you producing the most that others can take advantage of. Now, if you're now dependent on a huge product from other nations, rather than you producing, you become consumers and not producers. And when you become consumers and not producers, could be knowledge, could be anything else, you're definitely vulnerable to what COVID showed us. And we hope we don't have such experiences again. But that experience has given us an idea of how to be local, and I believe that would define or create the pathway to a stronger Africa, in my opinion. And a stronger, any economy is based on localization. What are you producing locally? So many times, every time I always keep asking until we start having our made local products. I was speaking to a few groups out of South Africa a few days ago, and I like the word when they use the word proudly South African products. That the local people are proud to want to support local businesses, and it's proudly made in South Africa. I wish that cut across all African markets, and that creates competition, and that creates better products and services. And that literally is what the global market is waiting for, when you have a very well competitive local market, and that then strive to create global market. And that's what localization creates, where it could be development, it could be investment, it could be anything else you're doing. Your educational piece, your structural piece, your investments, your policies, centralized around localization. How can my local community develop that can be moved to the next community? And whatever policy we have can then leverage on the stronger local presence that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That's a brilliant segue basically into the next part of the program, which is basically delving into understanding localization in different parts of the continent, and the key elements of a business basically establishing a local brand, and some of the best practices that they need to take into consideration before or while they're actually setting up their businesses here in Africa. We have several SMEs who are interested in developing their own niche here in this continent, whether it be whatever country it is that they're trying to set up in. But I think it's important that they understand what some of the key things that they need to consider will be before they just go in and develop their own business, because they may not necessarily understand certain things. A lot of people are very optimistic when they start business, but then as they move forward with their plans, as they start to encounter challenges in their markets, they become very confused and disoriented. They're not sure how to move forward. They're not sure how to proceed. Possibly because they don't take into consideration some of those key things that they may need to address will be. So I'm gonna pose the question to you, Mr. Kennedy. In your experience, what would you say are some of the most important things that a business owner, an entrepreneur, needs to take into consideration before they start business? What do they need to keep in mind? Say, for instance, someone wants to set up a soap making business, or let's say a furniture making business somewhere in Kenya, or you want to establish a perfume brand in Nigeria, and you want it to be global, but you want to start small. You want to start by tapping into your local markets. What are some of the things that they need to take into consideration before they go about their plan?
Thank you, David, for that wonderful question. I think some of the most important thing the business owners need to know and need to realize before they start the business itself. First of all, you need to realize that is there a gap you would want to fill? Is there a market which you want to exploit? For instance, when you are starting a soap business, let's say in Kenya, first of all, is there a need for that particular soap already in your locality? Are there people who want to use that particular soap? Or are you going to create something which is already available, and there are some businesses which are doing better than you, and you want to throw yourself into that particular competition space? So scanning the environment you want to work in is very important to ensure that you get to understand the terrain, the ecosystem of that particular environment in terms of market, such that when you are coming in, you know exactly that there is this particular gap which I would want to bridge, and there is this market which I want to exploit. And while doing that, you must sharpen your skills on how you are going to exploit that particular market in terms of what are you producing. If it is that soap, what have you introduced which is new in that particular soap, which is going to be appealing to the people who are going to buy? The next thing is how are you going to price your products? Pricing has been a serious challenge to many small businesses. Sometimes business owners try to price their products on the basis of whims and caprices, that is, just feeling without research. So that introduces us to another aspect which is very important. While you want to start a business, you have to do a research, and you must have data which accompanies your interest in that particular market. You must know how many people am I expecting to buy my products? What is the age group? What is their consumption levels? Because sometimes there could be people who want to buy, yes, but they are few. So maybe in a nutshell, those ones are some of the key areas which you need to understand before you jump into a specific area of operation in a given market. Back to you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. I think it was very important that you highlighted something that's very modern, but also at the same time very effective, and that's the use of data in any sort of business plan that you want to take on board. You need to make sure that you conduct meaningful research and you have sufficient data about. Obviously, you can't plan for all the different scenarios, right? No matter how much you plan, for instance, you probably would not have accounted for something as impactful and as dynamic as the COVID pandemic, right? That required such a huge response from different businesses. It pushed them to make different adjustments that they probably weren't expecting. It also left us with like so many different changes in the business world and the corporate world that we've had to adjust to and adapt to in the recent years. So you can't plan for everything, but to the extent that you can, it's important that you try as much as possible to look for your data and ensure that there's a need for that market. So thank you very much for expressing that to us, Mr. Kennedy. I'd just like to invite Mr. Temidayo on board now to discuss just a few, real life scenarios, basically, that because I know he has a lot of experience with some direct experience, basically, and direct impact with a lot of brands that are located in Africa. to share with us some of the experiences that he has had with actual businesses where whether they've done something that was very negative that impacted their business that they didn't see at the time, that lots of businesses in this space should be mindful of, or something that was very, very critical to the growth of the business that probably would have eluded many business owners. Just a brief discussion around those two things.
Thank you, Daniel. Before I answer your question directly, I want to reiterate on some few things when we use the word localization, right? And when we talk about localization in general, understanding that we have a very strong, we have a long way to go in terms of infrastructure development across the continent. Some are worse than the other ones. Building infrastructure is a key requirement to support localization and local growth and local businesses. So, if we do that, that's critical, right? The infrastructure we're talking about, could include, and not limited to, local policies. How strong are our local policies to support local businesses and support local SMEs and local entrepreneurs? They're very, very vital. While this is ongoing, we have to, keep in mind some few data points on what, few touch points and how we've seen it at Bayi and how we've been able to walk through it at Bayi. The first thing we have to look at is we have to leverage the current infrastructure. We can complain and do stuff every time and talk about we don't have enough resources. We can keep mentioning that over and over again while the government and all the other leaders are pushing that to go through. We should be confident of the fact that the limited ones that we have, and this is where localization really, really played a very major part. Because the more local it becomes, the better it is. The more local you get, the more we can mitigate some of the infrastructural barriers faced by local businesses. The more broader it becomes, the more challenging you need more infrastructure, in your supply chain to really, really expand. So focusing on local allows us to mitigate some of the infrastructural barriers we face in Africa. Now, when we take all that into account, most businesses that really, really survives in some of the businesses we've looked at or talked to, advice, are the ones that are benchmarked on localization, which means products and services are more locally, are more visible to their local community. So, which means that if it's ugali you're buying, if it's milk, if it's flour milk, if it's corn milk, if it's whatever product you're making, if it's a local services, if you're rendering services in regards to healthcare, whichever one we see, and this is a very, very critical piece point, particularly in an African economy. If you're a pharmaceutical store, they cater more to a certain localized demographic community in a very small localized environment that had allowed them to be able to keep their business up and running, rather way, ups and downs, primarily because you can quickly get out of your house and go to the next pharmaceutical store. That the convenience store is going to be open at a certain time. The person one-on-one. You could knock at 9 o'clock. You could knock on its door and say, "I need toothpaste. I need something." Now, those localized structure allows the community to function effectively. Imagine if most of the products and services in those pharmaceutical stores or those bodegas or those local shops are 80% locally made products, which means the toothpaste you see in those shelves are locally made. They're from a local manufacturer down the street or down the road or within the same community. That creates more accessibility, and it is, you think about 10 or 15% of their revenues is absorbed locally, which means that when there's a downtime, they would keep enough margins to keep their lights on. And primarily, they keep the lights on to actually keep jobs running in the economy. So, most of the businesses that we've seen and we've worked with are, that we like and we've, constantly encourage are businesses that are really central on localization, which means that they focus more on the services and their product they are rendering within their own local community, make their brand and their quality well known to their community, they say that that local brand is renowned. So their first line of defense, their first line of business is to make sure that within this demographic that I'm operating, I want to be the best product that could be there. Now, if you have those loyal customers and that loyal brand, that is easily transferred to another community. And that's why the benefit of localization is very, very critical. And it's very, very, it's an important piece of any development. If you're doing any economic development across Africa, you have to really, really center your approach on how can I build that fragmented local structure across your country or your state. And within your region, localization can be defined based on demographic and how you put it together. And fragmentation in this sense is very good, where it is fragmented, but also effective because resources are being absorbed locally, reducing the price of inflation, primarily because there's really no foreign inputs coming into the market to really, really, really destabilize. So that whichever foreign market, whatever foreign exchange currency, or whatever it is that is coming into the local market, is probably going to have a very limited effect on the overall product and services or overall pricing of the product. So the businesses we've worked with, that's what we see in them. They go to their local farms, to their smallholder farmers, get their food products, manufacture, turn it into a finished goods, and sell it back into the same local market. That is, the palm oil seller. He has a small acres of land that put palm kernel trees. Within that same local market, he absorbs that palm kernel and turn it into palm oil and sell that same palm oil to his local community. The only major input that is foreign within that mix is the price of oil and gas. Relatively to that, everything that is absorbed is done locally. So he or she can control, the impact of oil and gas on his business. That is where the government policies and innovation comes in to subsidize those areas for them. But looking at that value chain, those are some sort of local examples that can help. And if we look at it across different markets, your services you're rendering as a CPA or as an accountant or as a very easy example is the healthcare space. You have, if you go to any major streets in Lagos or in Ogun State or any other state across Nigeria or any other part of Africa, you will see some very small local, they call it small clinics, right? Mostly they call it urgent care in most developed countries. You have some urgent care doctors that the doctors by name. You could knock on a doctor's door when there's an emergency at 3:00 at night. So if those medical doctors can't localize care, we can also localize products and services, food products particularly. That commodity products that we can actually leverage. And Africa is huge with its resources. I think the more we start looking at the kind of support we provide to businesses and, encouraging them to tap more into their local resources, I think the better off we will be. And governments and policies supporting infrastructural development to make it easy for these businesses to strive. And multinationals and other NGOs doing the same approach, supporting those products, services in their local base where they are, I think goes a long way because, you're trying to support somebody. You bring them into the conversation to really know what they need within their own local markets to support growth. Some of them might not, what A needs in his communities might be different from what B needs in our community. So making an assumption that we all need the same thing, it doesn't really work in most cases. So, a local approach is everything that you're doing for that local community is central and is designed, structured by those people within that local demographic. I hope I answer your question, but not naming any specific names or brand that we've worked with, but all those things I just mentioned are lessons and things we've seen around businesses that we've supported or worked with or talked with in the past. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Temidayo. I think it's important just to highlight on how you basically discussed the importance of establishing sort of like a local supply chain, right? So that when you are trying to access those resources that you need as part of your production mechanism, you can get good sources around that community that you're trying to establish a market in. And this way, you're also creating jobs, and you're creating a solid partnership with people around that local region, and you're pushing them as well to improve their own business operations, because they're committing they're also contributing to the growth of that business and growth of that market. So I think that's very, very, very important to bring up and to highlight to like our viewers. So I just want to pose a question to Mr. Kennedy that has to do basically with financing and basically accessing the funds required to set these things up, because I know that's a big specialty of yours, Mr. Kennedy. What are some of the ways in which, or not necessarily the ways, but what are some of the things that businesses need to take into consideration before they can actually start accessing the capital required to set these sort of businesses up, and appeal to that local demographic, which can sometimes take time, because sometimes people are very different cultures call for different responses to market entry, right? So different cultures, different people across like different nations in Africa could be very open to trying new things within their community. Some are rather snobbish, right, towards that sort of development. They'd rather access the product from a foreign country or something that's already known. So what are some of the issues that these businesses have to deal with in terms of accessing the funds and maintaining that steady stream of financial resources until they get to a point where they've now achieved market dominance?
Thank you so much, Daniel. I think maybe just to go straight into your question, one area which is very important, which I've seen work out here in Kenya and some other places, is that first of all, when you are starting a business, a local business, it is very necessary to ensure that first of all, the entity is well registered with the authority, that is with the government. So first of all, when you are starting a business, whichever kind of business, say maybe you are manufacturing industry, or you want to start something in maybe tourism industry, you want to start a business in that particular space, the first thing which is very necessary to do is to register your business. After the registration of your business, now it is an established entity which is able to transact. Because sometimes when it is not registered, it is still not known. The next thing, which will be very necessary when it comes to accessing funding, is to ensure that your business has got a well established and organized structural organizational structure. Here I mean that you need to define what your business is in terms of what it does, who are the people involved in whatever you are doing. If it is soap making, what are you doing in that? Who is doing which particular thing? Who is sourcing the materials? Who are the people who are involved in the manufacturing of that particular soap? What are some of the areas? Who are the people who are doing the marketing, the sales and marketing? So this division of labor and roles are very important in establishing your business to be a very well focused business. So in that scenario, you'll find that it becomes easier for a bank or any other financial institution to lend you money, because financial institutions will lend you money when you have an organized entity. And here entity means the business. They want to put money where they know there are structures, there are a well-organized scenario where the business is operating, is well known, and the business is compliant with the government regulation, such that they don't lend money to a business and in the next minute the business is closed for having violated some of the rules or some of the regulation of the land. So it is very important that first, before you look into accessing funds, is the business registered? Do you have an office? Even if it is not physical office, it could be a virtual office, yes, but is it registered and well, you have a operational permit? So those ones are the key areas which are very fast to check into and to look into while trying to access funds. Then the next thing is to know how well do you know your business. Because first of all, before anybody injects money into a given business, the owner must demonstrate that they understand their business very well. That one will give confidence to the person who is lending the money that indeed, when I'm giving out my money, the person understands the business and is going to make profit, is going to use this particular money well to ensure that I get it back. So maybe in a nutshell, that is what I can say. Some of the areas which are very necessary, very important when it comes to businesses establishing and trying to access funds, whichever small ways, even if it is from the family members will want to know where they want to spend their money, where they want to inject their money, where they want to put their money. Is their hope that this money will make profit and this money will come back? So that is an area which is very important. Structures, you need to ensure that you have well structures. The other thing, it is organized and registered. The other thing is that you know very well what you are doing. If it is soap, you are not trying to learn. You have learned a few things. There are many things you are learning along the way, but you understand what it takes to run the simple basic of that particular business. Thank you so much. I think maybe just to have it in a short while like that. I don't know whether I came closer to answering your question. Back to you, David.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. You did answer it. Just to let you know, it was quite elaborate as well, but it was very impactful. And I think it's very important for businesses to understand that you need to have an expertise. You need to have a clear understanding of exactly what it is that you're doing. It's something that I hear amongst many investors, that the key thing to basically deciding whether or not someone is worth an investment, apart from just them being profitable, is that they have a very clear knowledge and understanding of the sort of business that they're running. So that's obviously always very important as well. And then obviously they also speak about having a structure, having something that is clearly managed properly, that has an accountable a system, and it's transparent. You can clearly see the aspects of the business that you require as someone who, as a stakeholder, or someone who has genuine interest in that business. So thank you very much for that. I just want to let everybody know, anybody who's watching us, that you can ask questions, you can pose any question based on anything that you've heard currently, or anything that you might hear in anything that you may be thinking of, basically, of asking our distinguished guests. You can put it in the comments, just so that you can have them answer, and you can have them move forward. So basically, I want to pose this final question to Mr. Tammy, and this would basically draw us to the conclusion of the program. Just before we leave, we'd just like to discuss what exactly it is that we at Buy Foundation bring to the different businesses and to the different people that are trying to localize in Africa, people that are trying to entrench their themselves basically in this market, and that are trying to expand here and are trying to touch base here in Africa. How exactly do we at Buy Foundation lend our expertise and our knowledge and our capacity within this space to improve your business and to make sure that you have all your bases covered before you start or before you move forward with anything?
Well, thank you for that question. We do a bunch of stuff. The first thing is, we're trying to do something different. And when I mean something different is that we're trying to look at what kind of type of immediate support or impact can we create. Finance is good. We would do that. But when you think about a journey of a financial, if you're looking for financing, so you must definitely be, if you're not in your idea stage, which we typically don't work with. If you're looking for funding as a small business, that funding must be towards growth. Most of and that's where the local story comes to play, right? So we tend to look at businesses at a pivotal point in their journey where they don't know where else to go. They have a good product, they have a good customer base, and what next? So what our program is typically designed to identify businesses that are willing to go above and beyond to stand out. Looking at their product mix, looking at how can I, so I was having a conversation, I was having a chat on and somebody was telling me how the disadvantage of bootstrapping, and I was trying to justify or try to encourage our audience at that time that what we do at Buy Capital is Buy Foundation is one thing, is we bring you in, we identify businesses that we know that the founders and the businesses are aligned. So which means that the founder's goal is to promote the business, the product and services. We bring them into our program. We have a bunch of programs that we do in different categories. But the key concept of it is that we provide a kind of support that you don't necessarily get out there. Which means, when I was talking about localization, I was talking about leveraging what you have locally to support your business. So don't look overseas or underseas or whichever seas you want to look at, but look within your community. Are you servicing your immediate community enough for them to be, that first capital, or that second or third or second of, whatever name you could call it? If you're a good brand within your market, looking at getting access to funding wouldn't be a problem, because you'll be visible to the local banks, to the local microfinance institutions. They would have street credibility. Your product would have enough street credibility enough to attract the kind of capital that would sustain you before the big guy sees you. So you have to be doing something. So we want to make sure that you get to that local brand loyalty stage where you are, if anybody comes, if somebody take a tour bus to your community, the first food they will recommend is your food, or within the top 10 food they will recommend is yours, or the top 10 products or services they will recommend is yours. So we try to help you get to that stage as a local business. And we do that carefully. And we do that by also engaging other local actors and local players, which includes making sure that your human capital is leveraged around people that are local within a geographic location where you are. So that is how we support businesses we literally look at your business take you into a diagnosis stage of the process where we diagnose what exactly is wrong with this business, and you do have a good product. Do you have a good side? Do you have a good product services? Do you have a good team around you? What is the bottleneck, that is holding you on from being that local champion that you should be? Then if we then identify that, we tend to identify local actors, local stakeholders that could come on board to help you in that journey, and that we use that within our fellowship stage. And thereafter, the rest is history. If you survive those two stages, recognitions will come, and so is funding from either us or somewhere else. And that is one major thing. If you are good locally, being attractive to others will not be a challenge, because locally there is credibility, and that local credibility is good enough to sustain your business. Because the word first for any investors to come in is sustainability. Can this business sustain itself over time? Now, if you've demonstrated that you're sustainable over time, which means that shows that you've demonstrated enough cash flows within that small business. That makes you attractive. And a lot of small businesses within their local community that have that potential don't even know they do. And that's the kind of business we're trying to fish out, and we're trying to support through our programs. And we try to expose them to the notion of what a retained earnings looks like, taking your business from a lifestyle to a legacy, which means that don't use your profits to go to parties or go to nightclubs, or trying to show that you're big while you're still, while you're struggling to pay, while you're struggling to keep the light on. And every penny make, identify that, when your break-even point is, what it is, and what, all those basic, simple things that are numbers, arithmetic things that you can figure out. Then when, put yourself on a salary scale that is manageable if you're the founder of the business, enough that you have an hands-off and an hands-off of some set of expenses that you don't do. All those basic things that we take for granted as a small business, and this is vital to local development. And if that's and that's what we put together, and that's what we bring in with our approach at Buy, and some of our partners are joining us in that scale. That's all I could add for now, but you can learn more about us through our website or all our social media handles. But we're always looking to support more businesses, particularly local business with good products and services. If you think you have a good product, we typically like anything else that we like products that are tangible. If you sell plantain chips, or you sell banana, or you sell lemonade, or you are making any type of consumer goods at all in any shapes and sizes, and you're central around your local markets, we would like to talk to you. So those are the kind of people we engage and we talk to. And most of our fellowship stages are grant stages where we would pay for somebody to come and work with you to help you build your business. So those are the kind of things that we do to show that we are all in this game of localization. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Timmy. It's been a fabulous conversation. Thank you as well. I'd just like to thank Mr. Timmy. I'd like to thank Mr. Kennedy for their time, obviously, and for just being here with us, for lending their expertise, lending their insights into this conversation, helping us move it along, and just providing the viewers with an understanding about the market, and just basically getting a good idea of what it takes to localize in Africa and why it's so important that we do so here. So if you'd like to learn more about us, just as Mr. Timmy was saying there, you can head on to our website. That's www.baifoundation.org. You can see the website there is on the screen. You can obviously also check our social media pages, just LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Bai Foundation. You can find us there. Reach out, obviously, for contacts. As you've heard, we're very open to partner with businesses looking to localize their products, looking to tap into the local markets, lend our expertise through the fellowship and through the training programs that we have, obviously, and move forward and push the business and push the economic situation in Africa into new heights. There's no limits really to what we can accomplish if we just go through the right methods and we do the right things that we deem necessary. So once again, I'd just like to thank everybody. It's been an impactful and an insightful conversation. We hope to have more conversations like this, reach out to more people, and have even more guests and more of our partners come on these sort of calls with us. So thank you so much and have a great day.